Boy missing for 6 years came back. His story was too heartbreaking to believe. The autumn wind rattled the glass doors of Miller's gas station as the bell chimed, announcing the arrival of yet another late-night customer. Behind the counter, Tyler wiped down the Slurpee machine for the third time that hour, his mind drifting to his biology homework that still needed finishing. At 16, working the graveyard shift wasn't exactly his dream job, but the steady paycheck helped ease the burden on his grandmother's shoulders. Tyler barely glanced up as Officer Bennett entered, the familiar creak of his utility belt echoing through the small convenience store. Bennett was a regular, always buying coffee and gas station nachos during his rounds, sometimes lingering to chat about the Red Wings' latest game. "Evening, Tyler," Bennett said, approaching the counter with his usual order of black coffee. "Hey, Officer Bennett. Long night? Always is when you're doing a double." Bennett pulled out his wallet, then paused, looking at Tyler more intently than usual. "You know, son, have you ever heard of a place called Maple Grove, Michigan?" Tyler shrugged. "Can't say that I have. Is it far from here?" Bennett's radio crackled to life, and he stepped away to answer it. Tyler watched as the officer's expression changed from tired routine to sharp alertness. Bennett motioned for him to mute the overhead radio, then placed a second call, this time on his personal cell phone. "Could you tell me your full name again, son?" Bennett asked, his professional demeanor now tinged with something Tyler couldn't quite place. Urgency? Concern? "Tyler James." "Why? Is everything okay?" Bennett nodded slowly, then made another call. Within 20 minutes, 2 more patrol cars pulled up outside. Tyler's hands began to tremble as he watched the officers approach, their faces serious, almost sympathetic. "Tyler, I need you to stay calm," Bennett said gently. "We need to take you down to the station. You're not in any trouble, I promise. We just need to run some tests." "Tests? What kind of tests?" Tyler's voice cracked. "I haven't done anything wrong." "We know, son. We just need to verify something. Your manager's already been called. You'll be back before morning, I promise." At the station, they took his fingerprints, photographs, and a DNA swab. Tyler sat in the break room, sipping weak coffee while officers came and went, speaking in hushed tones just outside the door. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Had someone with his name committed a crime? Was there some mistake in their system? "Tyler." Bennett sat down across from him 3 hours later, his usually jovial face now grave. "What do you remember about your early childhood? Before you lived with Miss Laura?" "Miss Laura told me my parents couldn't take care of me anymore. They gave me up when I was little. It was just that they couldn't afford me and my sister." The words came automatically, a story he'd repeated to himself countless times to make sense of his past. Bennett exchanged glances with Detective Morrison, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. "Tyler, I need you to listen very carefully. Your DNA matches a missing child from Michigan. A boy named Eli Ward who disappeared 6 years ago." The words didn't register at first. Tyler blinked, then let out a small laugh. "That's impossible. My name is Tyler James. I've lived with Miss Laura since I was 9. We need you to look at something." Detective Morrison slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, a smaller version of himself with 2 adults and a baby. The man had the same thick eyebrows, the same widow's peak. The woman had his exact same hazel eyes, the same pointed chin. "These are your parents, Tyler. Or rather, Eli. Darren and Rachel Ward. And this," she pointed to the baby, "is your sister, Nora." Tyler's, Eli's, mind began to fracture. Memories he thought he knew crumbled like sandcastles against the tide. The room spun as fragments of another life pushed against the carefully constructed walls Laura had built in his mind. I remember." His voice was barely a whisper. "I was at school. Someone came to get me. Said there was an emergency. But then we stopped for ice cream. I was confused because Mom never let me have ice cream before dinner." The memories flooded back in painful, disjointed pieces. A car ride that never ended. Laura telling him his parents had moved away, that they'd asked her to take care of him now. The tears he'd shed for weeks, wondering why his family hadn't wanted him anymore. Detective Morrison made the call that would shatter 3 families: the Wards, who had never stopped hoping; Laura, whose world of carefully maintained lies was about to collapse; and Tyler/Eli himself, caught between 2 identities, 2 lives, 2 versions of truth. As they drove him to Michigan, Eli stared out the window at the familiar yet foreign landscape. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text from his shift manager. "Hope everything's okay. Your paycheck's ready whenever you come back." But as the miles disappeared beneath the tires, Eli knew he would never be going back to Miller's gas station. The boy who had walked in that night no longer existed. And the boy he truly was, that was someone he'd have to learn to become all over again. The reunion was scheduled for the next morning. As they pulled into the station in Maple Grove, Eli caught sight of the couple waiting outside. Recognition hit him like a punch to the stomach. These weren't just people from photographs. These were faces he'd dreamed about in fever dreams he couldn't explain, voices he'd heard calling his name in nightmares he'd attributed to his imagination. Rachel Ward saw him first. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She simply raised her hand in a small wave, tears streaming down her face. Darren stood beside her, one arm wrapped protectively around her waist, the other hand wiping at his own eyes. As Eli stepped out of the car, 6 years of lies began to unravel. But with each step toward his real parents, one question echoed in his mind: if Laura had loved him as she claimed, why had she stolen him from people who had never stopped looking for him? And more terrifyingly, what else had she been hiding? Detective Morrison poured another cup of coffee as she spread the case files across the conference table. The evidence against Laura McAdams was mounting with each passing hour. What had started as a routine DNA match had uncovered a meticulously planned deception that spanned half a decade. "Look at this," she said to her partner, Pete, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Every document she created looks legitimate at first glance. Birth certificate for Tyler James, complete with state seal. Medical records. School transcripts from a private academy in Ohio that conveniently burned down 3 years ago." Pete whistled low. "She thought of everything." "Not everything," Morrison replied, tapping a photograph. "Security cameras don't lie." The grainy footage from Maple Grove Elementary showed Laura McAdams entering the building on October 17, 2019. She wore a substitute teacher's badge and carried a clipboard, blending seamlessly with the morning rush of parents and staff. In the video, she approached Eli's classroom, spoke briefly with the regular teacher, and emerged minutes later with the 9-year-old boy in tow. "Mrs. Taylor, the principal's office called. They need Eli for an emergency family meeting." The audio picked up Laura saying. The regular teacher, Mrs. Davidson, hadn't questioned it, not when Laura had all the right credentials, knew the administrative protocols, and even had Eli's favorite candy bar in her purse. Just in case he's upset. Child Protective Services tracked Laura to a modest rental house in Riverton, 2 towns west of Maple Grove. Neighbors described her as quiet but kind, always ready with fresh cookies for the local kids. She worked part-time as a guidance counselor at the community college and occasionally fostered troubled teenagers. She fostered 3 other kids in the past 4 years. Agent Sarah Jenkins reported during the arrest briefing. All of them returned to their original families or aged out of the system. No complaints, no concerns. She even received commendations for her dedication. The arrest happened at dawn. Laura answered the door in a faded blue Bayou sweatshirt, the same one she'd worn in her college yearbook photograph with Rachel Ward. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply nodded when they read her rights, as if she'd been expecting this day all along. In her home, investigators discovered a shrine to her past with the Wards. College photographs showed the 3 of them, Laura, Rachel, and Darren, laughing at parties, studying in the library, posing after graduation. But one photo had been defaced, Rachel's face scratched out with red pen. Laura's journals painted a different picture than the caring foster mother her neighbors knew. Entry after entry detailed Rachel's pregnancy, Her marriage to Darren, the birth of their children. She has everything I wanted. Read one passage from June 2019. A perfect family, a beautiful home. She doesn't even appreciate what she has. The final entry, dated 3 days before Eli's disappearance, was chilling. Some debts must be repaid. Some wrongs must be righted. The universe always finds a way to balance the scales. During interrogation, Laura maintained her composure. I saved him, she repeated, her voice steady, her hands folded neatly on the metal table. Rachel was different in college. Always so perfect, so judgmental. She'd tell you otherwise now, but I know who she really is. You lied to him. Detective Morrison pressed. You told the 9-year-old child his parents abandoned him. They did abandon him. Laura's first show of emotion cracked through her calm facade. Not physically, but emotionally. Rachel was always too busy climbing her corporate ladder. Darren traveled constantly for work. That boy came home from school to empty houses 3 days a week. That gave you the right to take him? Laura's smile was thin, almost pitying. I didn't take him. I rescued him. Ask him, was he ever hungry? Ever lonely? Did he ever doubt that someone loved him? The investigation revealed more disturbing details. Laura had been planning this for months, possibly years. She'd obtained a substitute teaching license, moved to Maple Grove under her real name but kept a low profile, learned the school's protocols inside and out. She'd even intercepted mail to the Ward house, causing financial chaos that kept them preoccupied in the months before Eli's disappearance. She's a sociopath. Dr. Richard Klein, the department's psychological consultant, concluded after reviewing the case files. Everything about her presentation, the kindness, the charity work, the perfect documentation, it's all a carefully constructed facade. But underneath, there's a deep-seated need for control and a sense of entitlement that justifies any action in her mind. Rachel Ward's reaction to Laura's claim hit everyone hard. I never reported anyone for negligence, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I barely remember babysitting incident. We used to joke about how she once cut Darren's hair so badly he wore a hat for weeks. But report her? Never. I loved her like a sister. The betrayal cut deeper than the years of loss. Rachel had spent 6 years believing her best friend from college simply drifted apart from her after a minor argument about wedding colors. She never knew Laura had harbored such resentment, such delusions about their friendship. As the evidence mounted, one photograph stood out among the rest, Laura and Eli at what appeared to be a school play. Eli wore a paper crown and cardboard sword, grinning at the camera. Laura sat beside him, one arm around his shoulders. To anyone looking, they seemed perfectly ordinary, a loving mother supporting her adopted son. But knowing the truth, Detective Morrison saw something else in Laura's eyes: possession, not love. Protection from an imagined threat, not nurturing care. And most disturbing of all, satisfaction, as if she'd won a game only she knew she was playing. Dr. Elena Martinez adjusted her glasses as she watched the teenager in her office struggle with fragments of memory. Eli, she reminded herself to use his real name, sat cross-legged on the therapy couch, building and rebuilding a small tower of blocks while speaking, as if his hands needed to create something solid while his mind unraveled years of careful lies. I remember the ice cream, Eli said, his voice detached, almost clinical. It was strawberry. Laura asked what my favorite flavor was, and I said chocolate, so of course she got strawberry. She did that sometimes, convinced me my own preferences were wrong. The memories emerged like watercolors in the rain, edges bleeding into each other, colors mixing in painful swirls. During their daily sessions, Dr. Martinez guided Eli through the fragments, helping him distinguish between implanted memories and genuine ones. She would tell me stories at bedtime, Eli continued, knocking down his block tower. Always about families who loved their children but couldn't keep them. Kind strangers who stepped in to save the day. I thought she was teaching me gratitude, but looking back, she was reinforcing the narrative. Dr. Martinez finished gently. The session that broke through came 3 weeks into therapy. Eli was drawing, a coping mechanism Dr. Martinez had encouraged, when he suddenly dropped the crayon. "The lunchbox," he whispered. "Oh God, the lunchbox." The memory crashed over him, his mother packing his favorite peanut butter and banana sandwich, adding a note with a smiley face and, "Love you, Eli Bean." Laura had kept that lunchbox for months after taking him, slowly replacing his things with new ones until nothing remained from his old life. "She threw it away when I asked about Mom one too many times," Eli said, tears finally breaking through the protective wall he built. "Said my real mother never cared enough to pack my lunch anyway. But that's not true. Mom she always added the notes." Rachel Ward confirmed every detail. "I wrote those notes every single day. Sometimes just simple ones, sometimes long ones when I knew he had a test or presentation. I never missed a day, even when I was sick." The revelation shattered more than just Eli's understanding of his past. It reopened wounds the entire family thought had scarred over. His sister Nora, now 10, remembered fragments too, hiding under the kitchen table while police officers asked questions, watching her parents cry on the bathroom floor when they thought she was asleep. "I used to pray every night," Nora admitted during a family session. "I'd ask for Eli to come home. When I turned 6 and you hadn't come back yet, I started wishing for a puppy instead. I felt so guilty about that." Eli's memories of that terrible day grew sharper with each session. The classroom had smelled like tempera paint and pencil shavings. Mrs. Davidson was letting them work on self-portraits, and Eli had been carefully coloring his eyes to match his mother's exact shade of hazel. The substitute teacher, Laura, came in and whispered to Mrs. Davidson. She looked worried when she called me up. "Eli, honey, you need to go with Miss Taylor now. There's been a family emergency." He remembered feeling scared but not suspicious. Adults didn't usually lie about emergencies. Laura had been kind, offering tissues when he started crying, promising everything would be okay. The ice cream stop had seemed strange. Why were they stopping for ice cream during an emergency? But she'd explained they needed a moment to talk about grown-up things. "She told me my parents were moving to California for better jobs. They couldn't afford Michigan anymore, and they definitely couldn't afford 2 kids. They'd asked her to take care of me until they got settled. But she said they might not be able to send for me right away." The cruelty of the lie took Dr. Martinez's breath away. To a 9-year-old, it created a perfect storm of guilt and powerlessness. Eli had spent years trying to be worth his parents' return, believing he wasn't valuable enough to keep in the first place. Meanwhile, the police investigation had unveiled its own painful truths. The substitute teacher database showed Laura had applied using forged references and a backstory claiming she'd moved from Nebraska. She'd observed the Ward family for months, learned their routines, their vulnerabilities. She knew about the parent-teacher conference that evening, Detective Morrison revealed. She'd called the main office that morning, posing as a district administrator, asking for the school's emergency protocols. They gave her everything she needed. The substitute teacher who vanished had never aroused suspicion because she never really existed. Laura had simply worn the badge for one day, executed her plan, and disappeared into her new life 2 towns over. Eli's breakdown came during a particularly difficult session. "Sometimes I wake up and for a split second, I call for Laura. I forget who she really is. Does that make me terrible? Am I damaged beyond repair?" "You're not damaged," Dr. Martinez assured him. "You're processing 6 years of psychological conditioning. Your mind protected you by accepting the reality she created. That's not weakness, that's survival." Recovery meant confronting the small betrayals alongside the large ones. Laura had changed his favorite color from blue to green. She claimed he was allergic to peanuts to avoid buying peanut butter. His mother's specialty sandwich was expensive during tight months. She told him he was bad at math because she struggled with homework help past elementary level. Each revelation stripped away another layer of the identity Laura had forced upon him, but also removed a piece of the foundation he'd built his teenage years upon. The question haunted every family session. How did they rebuild trust after such an elaborate deception? Eli's journal, assigned by Dr. Martinez, captured the confusion. Today I remembered Mom singing "You Are My Sunshine" while brushing my hair. Laura said she hated that song because it was too sad. Now I wonder what else she took from me without me even knowing it was missing. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the preliminary hearing began. Laura McAdams sat composed in her orange jumpsuit, her silver-streaked hair neatly braided, her eyes scanning the room with an unsettling calm. Behind the prosecution table, Rachel Ward's hands trembled around a tissue, her wedding ring clinking against her water glass as Darren tried to steady her. Word of the case had spread like wildfire through both towns. In Maple Grove, parents gathered outside the courthouse, some holding signs that read, "Justice for Eli," while others demanded answers from the school district. In Riverton, Laura's neighbors formed their own camps, some defending the woman they thought they knew, others shocked by the revelation of her dark deceptions. "She helped my teenager through his anger issues," said Maria Santos, a neighbor from Riverton. "I can't believe this is the same person. She babysat my kids. She organized the community food drive." But inside the courthouse, the carefully constructed image of Laura McAdams was methodically dismantled. Principal Hendricks took the stand first, his face ashen as he described the events of October 17th. "We had multiple protocols in place. No substitute should have been able to remove a child without parental verification. But she knew every loophole, every override procedure." His voice cracked. "I've been principal here for 15 years. Nothing like this has ever." The prosecution displayed Laura's forged credentials alongside the meticulously crafted alibi. Phone records showed she'd called the school office minutes before arriving, creating a paper trail that made her presence seem pre-approved. She'd even stolen Principal Hendricks' electronic signature stamp to validate the emergency forms. This wasn't a moment of weakness, Prosecutor David Chen argued. This was a months-long campaign of calculated manipulation. She didn't just take a child, she erased his entire identity. Former substitute teacher Sally Rodriguez testified about her stolen identity. "My laptop was stolen from my car 3 months before Eli's disappearance. I thought it was random. Now I know she used my teaching credentials to create her fake profile." The defense attorney, Milton Hayes, attempted to present Laura as a victim of her own delusions. "My client suffers from complex psychological issues stemming from childhood trauma. She genuinely believed she was saving this child from neglect." But when Rachel Ward took the stand, Hayes' strategy crumbled. Her voice steady despite her tears, she dismantled every accusation Laura had made over the years. "Laura was my maid of honor. I trusted her with my home, my family. She was there when Eli was born. She held my hand during labor." Rachel paused, collecting herself. "And she claims I was neglectful? That I didn't appreciate my children?" The prosecutor presented Rachel's phone records from the week of Eli's disappearance. Over 100 calls to 911, the school, family members, and friends. Credit card statements showed charges for missing person flyers, reward offerings, private investigators. "Does this look like a mother who didn't care?" Rachel's voice rose. "We spent our savings. Darren took a leave of absence from work. Our marriage nearly fell apart from the strain. And all that time, she was 2 towns away, playing house with our son." The most damning evidence came from Laura's own journals. The prosecution read excerpts aloud. "Rachel never deserved the perfect life she built. Some people need to learn through loss what others know through gratitude." Psychology expert Dr. Robert Chang testified about the damage done to Eli. "The subject was systematically emotionally abused through a process called gaslighting. Ms. McAdams created an alternate reality where the victim's family were the villains and she was the savior. This level of psychological manipulation causes deep trauma." Laura's defense team revealed their leverage during a recess. "We plan to introduce evidence of a past incident between Ms. Ward and Ms. McAdams during their college years. An alleged false report of child endangerment that derailed Ms. McAdams's planned adoption of a foster child." Rachel's reaction was immediate and visceral. "That's insane. We had an argument about her babysitting methods once. She let a toddler she was watching eat an entire bag of gummy bears for lunch. I told the mother, not child services. Laura had a habit of exaggerating everything. The next day, the defense presented their case. Laura's childhood records revealed she'd spent 5 years in foster care after her mother was declared unfit. She'd been moved between 7 different homes, experiencing neglect and, in one case, abuse. My client's actions, while misguided, stemmed from a genuine place of love and a desire to protect, Hayes argued. She saw herself in this child, abandoned, vulnerable, in need of a stable home. When Laura finally spoke, her words sent chills through the courtroom. I gave Eli 6 wonderful years. He was loved, fed, educated, and cared for. Ask him, did he lack for anything? Rachel may have given him life, but I gave him love. From his seat in the gallery, Eli felt the eyes of the court on him. Dr. Martinez had prepared him for this moment, but nothing could have readied him for hearing Laura's distorted logic presented as truth. The community's guilt manifested in different ways. The school implemented new security measures, installing cameras and requiring biometric verification for all visitors. Parents organized neighborhood watch programs and demanded mandatory background checks for all school staff. But some wounds ran deeper. Officer Bennett, the first to discover Eli, requested a transfer. I drive past that gas station twice a week. I've worked this beat for 10 years, and I never noticed him. How did I miss a missing child for that long? As the trial progressed, the tally of Laura's deceptions grew. False medical records claiming Eli had asthma. Manufactured report cards from his previous school. Even fake family photos where she digitally inserted herself beside him at various staged events. Judge Patricia Warren struggled to maintain order as emotions ran high. The courtroom had become a battleground not just for justice, but for the soul of 2 communities grappling with their collective failure to protect one of their own. The turning point came when the prosecution played a recording found in Laura's home, a conversation she'd secretly recorded with Eli 2 months ago when he'd asked about visiting his real parents in California. Tyler, my love. Laura's voice came through the speakers. Some truths are too painful to face. Your parents moved on. They have new lives now. You're my son, and that's all that matters. In that moment, even her staunchest defenders in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. The woman who had once seemed like a savior now stood revealed as the architect of a child's deepest fears and most painful misconceptions. The summer heat pressed down on Maple Grove as Eli sat in his childhood bedroom, trying to reconcile the life he'd lived with the one he'd lost. His old soccer trophies lined the shelves beside participation ribbons from the youth theater group he'd forgotten he'd ever joined. The Spider-Man bedding from 6 years ago had been carefully preserved by his parents, faded but clean. Across the hall, Nora's door remained perpetually ajar. She'd developed the habit of checking on him throughout the night, as if still not believing he was real. During the day, she'd invented elaborate reasons to hover nearby, asking for help with homework she'd already completed, suggesting movie nights featuring films that were clearly too young for him. Eli, you don't have to hang out with me if you don't want to, she said one evening after he declined her invitation to build a blanket fort. I know you're probably tired of kid stuff. He found himself unable to explain that it wasn't the kid stuff that scared him. It was the possibility of liking it, of letting himself care again, only to wake up one day and find it was all another illusion. The quiet moments were the hardest. During Laura's trial, when he sat in the courtroom listening to her distorted justifications, at least there were words, arguments, something concrete to focus on. But at home, in the spaces between conversations, his mind filled with competing memories. Late one night, he startled awake, instinctively calling out, "Laura!" when he couldn't find his glasses. Rachel, still sleeping fitfully these days, rushed to his room, hope and heartbreak warring on her face as she realized he'd called for his captor, not his mother. "I'm sorry," Eli whispered, causing Rachel to sit on the edge of his bed, something they both still felt permission to do rather than comfort. "Don't be sorry," she said. "She raised you for 6 years. It would be strange if you didn't have habits, instincts from that time. But the guilt festered. During therapy, Dr. Martinez helped him understand that loving the only constant in his life for 6 formative years didn't make him a traitor to his real family. Still, the knowledge that Laura had orchestrated every remembered kindness, that even his favorite meals were likely chosen to replace rather than complement his mother's recipes, left everything feeling tainted. Family game nights became minefields. Rachel would suggest Monopoly, and Eli would tense, remembering Laura's rage when he'd landed hotels on Park Place. "She taught me to count to 20 before rolling again," he mentioned once. "Said it brought better luck." Darren's jaw had clenched. "Pure superstition. Your mother always told you to roll quick because she had work to finish after bedtime." The small revelations accumulated like debris, each one chipping away at Eli's sense of foundation. His favorite song wasn't his favorite at all. Laura had played Hotel California on repeat until he'd associated it with safety and bedtime. The color green had supplanted blue after she'd painted his room and convinced him the old color was too babyish. During a particularly difficult family session, Dr. Martinez asked each family member to share a memory of Eli from before the kidnapping. Darren remembered teaching him to tie shoes using the bunny ear method. Rachel recalled his obsession with dinosaurs, how he'd correct adults on proper pronunciation of Brachiosaurus. "I collected books about them," Nora added quietly. "Our old house had boxes of your stuff in the attic. I used to go up there and read your dinosaur books when I miss you." Eli felt something break inside him. "Laura told me I used to be afraid of dinosaurs. She said that's why she donated all my monster books to charity." The tension in Darren's shoulders was visible. 6 years of small erasures, each one calculated to sever ties to their past. Each revelation brought fresh anger even as they tried to focus on healing. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in July. Eli was helping his mother make dinner, relearning old recipes and discovering Laura's versions had been intentionally altered. "She changed the spaghetti sauce," he said, tasting Rachel's traditional recipe. "Yours has oregano. I forgot oregano existed. You used to beg me to make this every birthday." Rachel shared, her back to him as she chopped vegetables. "When's my real birthday?" Eli asked quietly. "Laura said it was March 15th. But she lied about everything else." Rachel's knife stilled against the cutting board. "July 23rd. In 2 weeks." The silence stretched until finally, Eli voiced the question that had haunted him since his return. "Why didn't you find me sooner?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Rachel turned, her face crumpling with the weight of maternal guilt she'd carried for 6 years. "We tried, Eli. God, we tried. Police, private investigators, search dogs. We checked every lead, every sighting. Your face was on milk cartons, billboards, Amber Alerts. But I was just 2 towns away." His voice was barely audible. "Working at a gas station. Going to the store. How did no one recognize me?" Rachel moved to embrace him, but Eli stepped back, his shoulders shaking. The grief and confusion finally overwhelmed the careful composure he'd maintained throughout the trial, the therapy sessions, the reunification attempts. "I spent 6 years thinking you abandoned me," he continued, years of hurt pouring out. "And you spent 6 years thinking I was finished. Laura stole all of that time from all of us. She stole my dinosaur books and my birthday and my favorite color and I still dream about her making French toast on Sunday mornings." Darren entered the kitchen, drawn by the commotion. He found his wife and son both crying, either quite close enough to comfort the other. Nora appeared in the doorway, clutching a teddy bear that had belonged to Eli years ago. That night, after unsuccessful attempts at family therapy emergency intervention, the house fell into a different kind of silence, one heavy with unveiled truths. Eli locked his bedroom door for the first time since returning home. Rachel sat in the living room, staring at a photo album of the years without him, Nora's first day of school, family Christmas mornings with one stocking left empty, vacation photos where they'd always left space for him in framed positioning. In her room, Nora wrote in her diary, Maybe it's better that Eli's mad at Mom and Dad instead of being sad all the time. At least he's talking now. At least he's here. The next morning, the house remained quiet. Eli emerged from his room only after hearing his parents leave for work. He found breakfast prepared, his real favorite cereals, cornflakes, not oatmeal, and Rachel's note. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Love, Mom." The simple reassurance felt like permission to be angry, to grieve, to acknowledge that loving Laura, even the false version of her he'd known, didn't diminish his capacity to love his real family. It just might take time to remember how. The courtroom was packed for sentencing day. Laura McAdams entered in a crisp white blouse and navy pants, her lawyer having insisted civilian clothes would present a better image for her final statement. She faced the judge with the same unsettling composure she'd maintained throughout the trial. "Ms. McAdams, you have been found guilty on all counts: first-degree kidnapping, forgery, and psychological endangerment of a minor. Before I pronounce sentence, you have the right to address the court." Laura stood, turning not to the judge, but toward the gallery where the Ward family sat. Her eyes found Eli first, then Rachel and Darren. "I stand here today without remorse for loving a child who needed me," she began, her voice clear and steady. "For 6 years, I protected Tyler, Eli, from the harsh realities of abandonment. I gave him structure, education, and unwavering affection. These are charges I gladly accept." Rachel's hand tightened around Darren's arm as Laura continued. "Did I make mistakes? Perhaps. Did I bend laws created to keep children from homes that truly love them? Yes. But ask Eli if he ever went to bed hungry. Ask him if he ever felt unloved. Ask him if I didn't do what any mother would do to protect her child." Judge Warren cut her off. "Ms. McAdams, you are not his mother. You kidnapped him, manipulated him, and deprived him of his constitutional rights. This court is not interested in your justifications." Laura's final words were directed at Eli. "I'll always love you, sweetheart. No amount of anger or brainwashing can change that truth." Eli sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Dr. Martinez had prepared him for this possibility, that Laura might use her final moments to try manipulating him one last time. "Laura McAdams, I sentence you to 18 years without possibility of parole. This sentence accounts for both the premeditated nature of your crime and the extensive psychological damage inflicted on your victim." No gasp, no cry escaped Laura as the bailiff led her away. But cameras caught the moment her composure finally cracked, a brief grimace as the handcuffs clicked closed. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. Rachel shielded Eli as they pushed through the crowd. Nora, deemed too young to attend the sentencing, waited at home with Darren's sister. The family had agreed, no interviews, no statements. This chapter needed to close quietly. That evening, they sat around the dinner table, a ritual they'd reinstated with growing consistency. Darren served Rachel's spaghetti, now restored to its original recipe. Eli ate slowly, no longer inhaling his food as if afraid it might disappear. "What happens now?" Nora asked, voicing what everyone wondered. "Now we figure out what normal looks like," Rachel answered, her voice steady. "For all of us." 3 months after the sentencing, the healing process shifted from crisis management to long-term adjustment. Eli enrolled in Maple Grove High as a junior, joining the soccer team, a sport Laura had convinced him he'd be terrible at, despite his natural athletic ability. His teammates accepted him without questions, and his coach seemed to instinctively understand when he needed space. Family therapy evolved from emergency sessions to weekly maintenance. Dr. Martinez noted progress in unlikely moments, Eli calling Rachel Mom, without hesitation, the easing of his hypervigilance around new people, his ability to laugh without immediately checking others' reactions to ensure his emotions were acceptable. Nora became his unexpected anchor. Having grown up hearing stories about her missing brother, she possessed a patient understanding of his fractured identity. She took to leaving small notes in his backpack. "Hope you aced the math test," or "Grandma's coming for dinner tonight, she makes better cookies than mine." On July 23, Eli's true birthday, the family marked the occasion privately. No grand party. Healing required gentler celebrations. Rachel recreated the dinosaur-themed cake from his 6th birthday. Nora presented a scrapbook she'd been secretly compiling. Photos of the search efforts, news articles, missing person posters, and later, pictures from his return and the trial. "I wanted you to see how many people never stopped looking," she explained as Eli flipped through pages of strangers holding vigils, community searches, and the reward fund that reached 6 figures. That night, Eli found a slip of paper that had fallen from Nora's scrapbook. It was dated 2 years after his disappearance, written in her young handwriting. "Dear Diary, I talked to Eli's picture today. I told him I learned to ride a bike. I hope he's learning new things too, wherever he is." Something loosened in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His abduction had stolen from his entire family. His return couldn't erase those years, but perhaps they could rewrite what came next. As autumn painted the Michigan landscape, the Ward family found their new rhythm. Eli still had nightmares occasionally, but they grew less frequent. He began making friends, people who knew him only as Eli Ward, not the missing boy returned. One evening, sorting through old photographs for a family project, Eli paused at one picture, himself at age 6, grinning toothlessly while holding a kindergarten art project, a finger-painted heart with the words, "My family," scrawled across the top. "Mom," he called, using the term that now came naturally. "Did I really make this, or is it another false memory?" Rachel joined him, touching the faded construction paper. "You made it on Mother's Day. I was 8 months pregnant with Nora. You told everyone at school your mommy was going to have a baby dinosaur." Eli smiled, a genuine expression that no longer required self-censorship. "I should probably make you a new one. Only if you want to," Rachel said. "We're not trying to replace those 6 years. We're building something new." And in that simple exchange, Eli felt the first genuine hope since his return. Laura's sentence marked the end of one chapter, but their healing was writing a different story entirely, one where love didn't manipulate, where families didn't require perfection, and where a boy could finally learn to be himself without the shadow of someone else's lies. 6 months after the sentencing, on a particularly cold Michigan morning, Eli woke to find a note slipped under his door. Nora's handwriting read, "Happy Tuesday. I'm glad you're back. Let's build that blanket fort after school." For the first time since his return, Eli wrote back, "Maybe after homework. And this time, let's use real pillows, not just memories."